So I'm just going to start by opening a new project, just from a blank screen. Can you guys hear me okay in the back? Okay. If you can't hear, just let me know. I can turn the mic on. So let's just start by start by drawing a few walls. At the top here, you have the Home tab. This is where the majority of the tools you're going to be working with really kind of live. So I'm going to click down here on the wall tool. There's actually a top and a bottom part of the buttons. When I click on the bottom part, it gives you a couple different options if you click on the bottom part. So I'm going to just start with a good old-fashioned regular wall. And it's important to know where you are in this I guess sort of in this space right now. If I were to pull this up, you can see my project browser here. It tells me it has this level 1 highlighted, so then I know that that I'm in level 1 right now. So I'm essentially kind of on the first floor. So I'm in a floor plan, which is fine. So I'm going to grab that wall tool again, and I'm going to draw a wall that let's say it's 80 feet. And then I'm going to draw another one, and I'm going to make it, say, 20 feet away. Now you'll notice as I'm positioning my cursor here that it's giving me this temporary dimension. So I'm sort of taking advantage of that. What it's doing, of course, is snapping to the top, to the end of that other wall. So I'm going to go at 20 feet. And this time, instead of dragging my cursor, there are two things that are happening here. You'll notice that the 20'6" and then the 90 degrees, both of that text is actually blue, which means that it's sort of active and editable. So what I could do right now actually is type 80 and hit enter. And it will actually give me an 80-foot long wall. And maybe those are a little bit too long. Let's make these 60 feet instead. So if I want to change them, I'm going to select one of these walls. And there's a couple ways I could change the length. You can see that this 80 feet here is also, again, in blue. If I click in that and type 60, and the length would change. I could also drag, you have these grips on the ends. I could also drag the grips down. And you'll notice that it actually snaps to the ends. So that works pretty well. And then let's look at this in 3D. You'll notice up at the top there's this little 3D house. So click on that. There are a couple different ways to sort of navigate this space. You can actually use this little guy, or if you hold down Control and your scroll button, Shift and your Control button, it will allow you to kind of orbit around a little more freely. So you can see we have these two walls. Over here, again, in the project browser, this is where all your views live. So let's look at an elevation. I'm going to go to the north elevation in this case. And you can see a couple important things. Maybe the first thing to talk about is the fact that this north, east, and south elevation and west elevations, that they exist. The reason they exist, obviously I didn't make those, I just opened up a new file and I started drawing. So where did they come from? Does anybody know where these views came from? Pardon, I can't hear? Uh-huh. Yep. Yep. But who put them there, right? I mean, I didn't draw them, right? Part of the template, exactly. So when you open up a new Revit file, it loads a template, and it loads a bunch of content. So it gives you a bunch of, for example, wall types and door types and window types, and then it also makes views for you. So for us, it made 4 elevation views, and it also made 2 levels for us. So it made level 1 and level 2. Presumably, you guys understand how these, what these levels actually mean. They indicate the different floor levels in a building. We're going to put a floor on level 1, and we're going to put a floor on level 2 a little bit later. What I wanted you guys to think about is, so we drew these walls, and they were actually unconnected. So they're actually 20 feet tall. They're not actually connected to anything. What's interesting about Revit is that whenever you draw something, it always wants to define its position in space relative to a grid line or a level. So when we drew this wall, the base constraint was level 1. If I wanted to, I could have offset it, so it could have been a foot below level 1 or a foot above level 2. And then the top constraint, it actually could have been constrained to level 2. If I click that, it's actually constrained to level 2. And the reason that's really useful is that if I change this to 11 feet, you'll notice that that wall actually moves with it. So that's when you start to get into some of the parametric relationships that you can establish in Revit by defining a piece of geometry's relationship to some of these references. So I'm actually going to align both of these with level 2 for now. I'm going to go back into floor plan, level 1. And I'm going to build 2 curtain walls. So I'm going to sort of close off this box. I'm going to select the wall tool again. But in this case, previously we worked with the basic wall tool. So the walls that I drew, they were generic 8-inch walls. I could also have chosen down here to work with a curtain wall. And really any one of these 3 would be fine. They're basically the same. So I'm going to select curtain wall 1. And in this case, the base constraint is level 1. The top constraint, I'm going to make this level 2 before I even draw it. And then I'm going to come here, and let's say I'll come 2 feet off the edge, and I'll draw a curtain wall there. And then this guy here, 2 feet from the edge as well. Let's say I drew this on the wrong spot. Let's say I drew it at 3.6. Let's say I want to move it back. If I select this wall, I'll get one of these automatic dimensions. And it'll dimension that wall to the nearest grid line or nearest wall. So all I have to do is select 3'6", and then I can change it to 2 pretty easily. So then again, if I go back into 3D, you can kind of see what we have going. I'm going to change the style down here. It's currently set to, I think, wireframe. I'm going to select it to shaded. You can kind of get a look at it. There's also consistent colors, which is a little more SketchUp-y here. Just to give you a little better sense of what we have. Just while we're here, there is a shadow tool down here that you could choose to use. Let me see. There's also the sun path that you can turn on. To give you a little more, again, if you need any of this sort of reference information on here. I will tell you that the shadows will pretty dramatically slow down your model. So that's kind of that. We go to level 1. Let's move on and let's make a floor. So we have a couple of walls. Let's move on to making a floor. As you can see, again, there are a couple different types of floors you could have here. I'm going to select just the standard floor tool. And here you have a generic 12-inch deep floor, which is fine for now. This goes back to what I was talking about earlier. It's very possible to be very specific with the types of walls that you're drawing. You can define the composition of those walls, and define the hatch patterns and thicknesses and all that stuff. But for now, and certainly if you're kind of working out some sort of, if you're doing design iterations, sometimes it doesn't make sense to get to that level of detail. So you kind of have to make a decision about when it does and when it doesn't. So for now, I'm going to just sort of stick with the generic stuff. There's a couple different ways you could actually draw the floor, but I'm going to use these really simple drawing tools up here. I'm going to select the rectangle tool, and draw a simple floor. Uh, this is what we'll do. And you might notice right now that it's hard to see exactly where I'm gonna finish because the line work is so heavy. One quick key or one little tool up here, which seems to be missing, is this right here. It's called thin lines. The quick key is TL. So if I type TL, you'll see that the line work goes to extremely thin, so I can see a lot better. So again, it's just sort of a toggle so that you can see better. I think that'll do it for now. I'll select OK. And I'll go back into 3D to see what we have. You can see now I have a floor of some sort. Now, what I want to do next is I want to create a section view so that I can see a little bit better about the relationship between the floor slab and the wall. So I'm going to go into floor plan level 1, and I'm going to come up here to the View tab. This is a new tab, and this is where many of the tools that you might use to create views or manipulate views, this is where they live. In this case, I want to create a section, so I'll select Section. And then I'll draw my section from left to right. Now, what's interesting about the section tag when I select it, can anyone tell me what those blue dashed lines might mean? What do you guys think they mean? What do you think? The direction of the view. What does that bounding box or that dashed line box mean? You're correct. That is the direction of the view, but what is that box trying to tell you? It's trying to tell you what you're actually able to see. So these little grips here, if I grab them, if I actually pull it down, it would actually mean that I wouldn't be able to see this part in this section view anymore because this is the limit of my section view. I could also select this little guy and drag him over, and then I wouldn't be able to see the section in this view. So to illustrate that maybe a little bit better, and I guess what's important to think about is when you're working in CAD, when you draw annotation, it doesn't really have much of a purpose other than just to tell you the data about what where you can find that section. When you're working in Revit, the section tag actually creates the view. So now if I come to my project browser and I go under sections, if I go to section 1, this is actually that section. So if I delete that section tag, it will delete this view. So these what you typically think of in CAD as annotation is actually way more powerful when you're working in Revit. I'm going to do something here. I'm going to hit WT, which stands for window tile, and then I'm going to type ZA, which stands for zoom all. I'm going to close these two guys, and I'm going to do it again. So you can see a little bit better. You can see this is the floor plan, and this is the section 1. If I select this guy, and if I move this box, you'll see that it moves it over here. Does that make sense? If I select it again, and if I pull this in, I don't know you're going to see much of a difference. Actually, let me just do this. If I pull that over, you can see that it changes the section over here. And then finally, you can see if I select this and if I delete it, it says view section 1 will be deleted, and then view section 1 goes away. So imagine if you spent 4 or 5 hours perfecting a beautiful section drawing, hatching it, annotating it, putting entourage in it, and then you wanted to get rid of a section tag in a plan view, so you just deleted it, and you're in Revit. You would have deleted that view and all that work that you had done. So it's a really important idea to understand that this annotation creates the views. Okay, here we are again. So what I want to do next is actually I want to make a second floor of this building. So I'm going to take my section here and I'm going to actually drag it up. And I'm going to make another level. So I'm going to go to the Home tab. And since my screen's a little small, it might be hard to see, but under the Datum tab here, if you go to the top there, you should see the level tool. And I'm making I'm positioning these so that they're 11 feet apart. So this next level will be 11 feet apart. And again, what's interesting, this goes back to the thing about the section. When you draw a section tag, it makes a section view for you. When you draw a level, it makes a plan for you. And it actually makes a ceiling plan for you as well. So you'll notice, well, I guess you can't see it here, but as soon as I select it, level 3, and then over here you'll notice that now I have another level, a level 3. So for the moment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go into level 2. There's something interesting happening in level 2. You'll notice that you can see my plan, but it's grayed out. So there's a really nice feature when you're working in plan, and it's called underlay. So this is the properties of my floor plan right here. If I scroll down, you'll see it here. It says underlay, and it says level 1. I could turn that to none, and then I would see nothing. But in this case, I actually want to use that floor plan to draw over. So I'm going to use that as an underlay. And then I'm going to draw 2 more walls. But I'm going to pull them, let's see. I'm going to pull them 10 feet off the edge. So if that's 2, that makes that 8. It wants to be 8. And then I'm going to make this. What's interesting is you can see that the wall tool assumed that I wanted to use the last wall type, which was curtain wall, which I didn't want. So I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to show you how to change it. I'm also going to make this 60 feet. And then I don't want a curtain wall here. I actually want this to be that other generic wall. So I'm going to use the basic wall generic 8 inches. And it appears that they're misaligned. And the reason they're misaligned is because when you draw a wall, you have the option to choose the location of how you draw it. So you can choose. I'm going to grab this wall here. You can choose to draw it from the wall center line or the core center line or the exterior or the interior. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to align these 2 walls. So they're sort of misaligned right now. If you go to Modify, the Modify tab, this is where you'll see a lot of the like move, copy types of commands. One of them is Align. Align is a tool that you end up using quite a bit in Revit. So you grab the Align tool, go to this edge. And one thing I'm doing here that's important, sometimes it's actually really hard to select things when you're working in Revit. You have multiple things overlaid on top of each other. So in this case, for example, I want the edge, but I'm getting the center line. So how do I get the edge? Well, I can put my cursor there, and sometimes that works, but many times it doesn't. And so you have to, I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm actually pounding on the tab key. As I pound through the tab key, It actually cycles through all the different options of things that you could select. So my cursor is on the edge, and then I hit Tab until I find the right thing, and then I select both of them and align them both. I'll go to and draw the other wall. Again, this is on wall center line. Maybe I'll do finish face exterior. See if that works. And then I know this is 60 feet, so I'll just type 60. And that's different, of course, than it is in CAD. When you're in CAD, when you type 60, it thinks inches. When you're in Revit, you type 60, it thinks feet. So you got to kind of keep that in mind. And then I'm going to kind of keep going with the same approach and plan. So I'm going to build a curtain wall up here. And this one is going from level 2 up to level 3. So in this case, it's when I select this this curtain wall, it's actually not giving me a dimension to where I want it. I want it to the end. So one thing I can do is use this little measure tool up here. I'll go from here to here. It's 3 foot 4 1/4. I know that if I select this, I could go to the Modify tab and move this 1 foot 4.25 inches. And check that again. Another thing you can do here to get it just right is you could actually draw a dimension. Dimensions are under Annotate. So I'm going to grab an align dimension. Since I'm not getting an automatic dimension, I'm going to make my own, and I'm going to use that dimension to position this wall, and then I'm going to delete the dimension because I don't need it anymore. So I'm going to go from the end. Whoops. I'm going to go from this end to there. It says 2 1/4. I'm going to select this. There it is. So then that dimension becomes, when I select the wall, it becomes active, and I can simply type 2, and then it'll move that wall 2 feet. And then I can either choose to keep this or I could delete it. I'm going to delete it for now. And then again, I'll draw a curtain wall from level 2 to level 3. I want this to be 2 feet off. Okay, and then I'll go back to 3D, kind of see what we have. All right, sort of a good start. So I'm going to go to level 2, and I'm going to draw the floor between the two. Again, I'm going to use this rectangle here. And this is a generic 12-inch floor, which is fine for now. And then it's asking me, do I want the walls that go up to this floor's level to attach to its bottom? And for now, I'm going to say no. And again, go back into 3D. You can kind of see we have these two boxes. And again, what I'm trying to do right now is just kind of rough this out, get kind of the major pieces in place, and then go back and refine it. So perhaps the last piece to add here, just to kind of to get the basic components in place, is to add a roof. So I'm going to go to level 3, and it looks like it's giving me level 2 as an underlay, which is good because I want to draw on top of level 2. So I'll come here to roof, and you have a bunch of different roof tools. You can kind of see the inclination of Revit toward more residential or more sort of conventional architecture. Um, but with the roof by face, or even with the roof by footprint, you can basically make a flat roof. And then with the roof by face, you can use a mass that has any old sort of geometry, as this is suggesting. And then you can select a face, and it will create a roof form based on a face of a mass. So for now, we'll just do roof by footprint. And I will grab the rectangle tool. Um, let's do it from here for now. Now, what's important is that if you want this to be a flat roof, which I do, you do not want to have the defined slope checked. So I'm going to uncheck that, which means that it'll be a flat roof, which for our purposes is fine. And this roof is being placed at level 3, which for now is fine. So we'll select OK, go to 3D. So there we go. We kind of have the pieces in place. All right, so let's see a couple things here. Number one, I'm missing a roof over here. So let's add a little roof onto that spot. I want to go to level 2. So I'll go to roof, roof by footprint again. Sort of the same process. Grab a rectangle. And then come to here. Give that a check. Go to 3D. So we have a roof. Of course, these are in the wrong places right now, but we'll fix that in a second. All right. So this is pretty close. What do we want to do next? I think the next thing to do here is really get these roof plane, floor planes sort of in the right position. So I'm gonna go to level 1, and I'll select this guy. Go to View. So what I want to do actually with this roof is I want it to be, as you can see, we sort of have the wrong roof situation here. Put the lines on so you can see better. So what I either need to raise the walls or lower the roof, and I think I'm probably going to do a little bit of both. So I'm going to select this roof, which is 12 inches, and this is where that offset comes into play. So this thing is currently stuck on level 3. I know it's a foot thick, so I'm going to offset it negative 1 feet to move it down. And then I need a little bit of a parapet here. So this is tied to level 3. Maybe we can let's say we can get away with a foot of a parapet. We'll do the same thing on this side. So that's kind of the correct arrangement. Now, just to demonstrate why working with these levels is actually really handy, if I were to change level 3 to 25 feet, then all those relationships stay the same, right? The position of the parapet as well as the floors themselves. So that's really handy. Now we can also build a foundation wall and a footing, which let's go ahead and do that. Now Revit's asking me if I want to save this project. I'll say yes. For now, I'll go into desktop and I'll call it IC House. It's important for you guys to understand one thing about how I'm working right now. I described to you earlier that when you're working in Revit, there's really one file. It's called the central file, and that when you work as a group, everybody creates their own copies of that called user files, and they work in the user files. Since I'm demonstrating this as just sort of my own project, and since you guys are sort of working on your own projects, you can kind of consider that you're actually working in the central file, which if you came into an office and you started working in the central file, it would probably be your last day in the office. So it's just kind of good for you guys to understand how we're working. You could set up a user file, central file relationship, which is probably a good idea. The reason you would get fired if you worked in the central file is just because if there's only one file, I mean, imagine this. If there's only one file and there are thousands of hours of work put into that one file, if that one file is destroyed or corrupted or ruined, well, then that's a tremendous amount of money and investment that goes to waste. So that's actually what's nice about the user file, central file thing, is you actually have, a group of temporary files, any of which could actually be converted into a central file at any time. So it's essentially a bunch of backup plans in case the central file would actually get corrupted. So it's just important for you to understand that I just saved my central file that I'm now working in, which is probably a little bit of a not the best way to work. I'm going to draw another section. I'm going to go into Plan. I'm going to draw a longitudinal section. I'm going to go to the View tab again and go to Section. Draw this guy. Before I go there, actually, I'm going to go back and draw those foundation walls. If I go to Home and then Wall, I'm going to select Structural Wall. And again, I'm just going to make this another generic 8-inch wall for now. Now the difference, though, is that this is going to actually be a wall that's going down. So the base constraint is going to be level 1. The top constraint, let's make it unconnected and let's make it negative 3'6". Actually, it doesn't want me to do that. So what would be a better idea would be to go into elevation or a section. I'll go into north elevation again. And I'm going to draw a level at 3'6" below level 1. Maybe I'll bring these levels over a bit. I'll just note that I'm moving these levels over kind of casually. Doing that can be pretty dangerous because these levels are not just lines. They're actually planes that cut through the entire model in every single view that looks in section or elevation. But since we're short on time, I won't get into that very much. Just know that that's something to be careful about. Actually, that's called level 4. Let's rename that. We'll go into the north elevation. We'll call this, let's call this call it level footing, and it asks me if I want to rename the corresponding views, and I'll say yes. So you'll see this change. This is now called level footing. I'll go to level footing, and actually no, we'll go to level 1. That's fine. And I'll go to wall, and I'll select structural wall. Again, I'll grab a generic 8-inch wall. I'll do this from the finished face exterior. And then my base constraint is going to be level footing, and my top constraint is going to be level 1. And it's telling me that none of the elements are visible. And the reason is because everything I just drew is below the first floor plan, right? And the first floor plan view itself, it actually has limits on how much you can see. You can set them at different limits. And so currently you can't see below the first floor, so it's saying that it's not visible, which is fine for now. Pretty much know what we have. So I'm going to go in the other direction. And now if we go into section, let's see what this looks like. How do we do? So it looks like I didn't do exactly what we wanted. It actually looks like we have two of them on top of each other. So I'm going to drag this guy down. So that we have that wall and then this wall. And then I'll go back into that other section. And it's like that's the guy we want. All right, so now we have some foundation walls. And I'll go into 3D. Now while I'm here, I want to show you that there are some site tools in Revit that you might want to take advantage of. So very quickly, I'm going to go to Home. Actually, I'm going to go to Massing and Site. And then the site tool in Revit is called Toboe Surface. It's actually very simple. You can either import closed polylines that are actually raised in elevation, and then it'll drape a surface over that, or you can actually draw points and give the points an elevation, and then it'll make a surface based on that. So for now, I'm gonna start drawing some points. So these are sort of the three different types: place point, create from import. Actually, maybe these are the two different types. So I'm going to use place point, and I'm going to put these at elevation 0, 0. So this should be a really simple, flat site that it'll create for me. If I click OK, go to 3D, you see that it's actually cutting through. Now here's one of the tricks when you use this tool. Um, you'll notice that something funny is kind of happening here where the floor is, right? It looks like there's no hole cut in the earth here, right? And the reason is because when you're working with the when you want to cut a hole in a site, you have to use a building pad, and that actually cuts a hole in the as it's showing in that little diagram. It cuts a hole in the site. So I'm actually going to go back to level 1. Actually, I'm going to go to a section. I grab my floor here, and you'll notice that now you can see a little earth, which, to be honest with you, that's sort of the primary reason for using the Topo Surface tool. Um, can be pretty limiting, especially when you want to get into drawing curbs and you want to draw, kind of a parking lot and all that kind of stuff. I found it to be a lot easier, a lot faster to actually model those things independently, just as generic models that you then place, and you kind of stay away from the topo surface. But certainly, I kind of stage, this is kind of a handy tool to have. So again, real quick, I'm going to delete this floor, go back into level 1, and I'm going to make that as a building pad. It's basically the same, it's just a different type of floor. So it's called pad 1. We'll grab the rectangle tool, drop it in here. And then go to 3D again. And then you can see that that problem doesn't exist anymore. And then actually, if you go into one of the sections, you can actually see it cutting through the earth there. So let's go back to this other section. There's a number of things that are happening in this section that need to be adjusted. Now, one thing I just did here, so this goes back to the level thing, which maybe I'll take another minute to talk about. In this case, these levels are in my way. I don't want to see them. I want to move them so I can see the building. Problem is since these not, they're not just lines, they're actually planes that are cut through the entire model. If I actually move them in this view, it moves them in every other view in the entire project, which may not be what I want. So it's important. Revit gives you a way to move them, and it's important to understand that you can really only move them when this says 2D. If I were to pull these here, which will show a little differently, if I click on 2D, it should make them 3D. Let's try this guy. So these guys here are actually 3D. If I wanted to move them, the best thing to do would be actually to change them to 2D levels, and then I wouldn't be manipulating them throughout the entire project. For a 2-hour course in Revit, this is probably a little much, but most people have a hard time with this particular problem. I'm going to take these guys, and since they are 2D, I'm going to drag them off to the side so I don't see them. And then I don't want to see my crop region anymore, so I'm going to hide the crop region down here. I'll make that go away. And then this section tag, I can actually cut it. So there's a little zigzag here. I can cut that guy. Yeah, so this is, I'm going to pull this a little further out. And maybe just for clarity, I'll make this consistent color so I can see a little bit better. See what we have. So there's a couple things that I want to have happen here. Number one is I want to, well, this roof here is also off. So this roof needs to move down. So we'll move this guy down -1 from level 2. That'll bring him down. And we also very likely need to then move this up. So we'll take this wall, we'll make this wall a foot taller. So we'll give this an offset of 1 foot. Okay, and these walls are currently overlapping, which we'll come back to in a little bit. We need to go in a section and actually move the other one. So I'll go to view. You can kind of see how you continually have to move back and forth between section and elevation and plan in order to make it work. Again, the top constraint, we'll make that a foot above. Now these walls overlap. So now we have kind of the correct relationship with the floors. Then over here, we actually want to have a little bit of a lip. So maybe what we'll do is we'll extend this floor out. Maybe we'll make a new piece of floor out here. So I'll go to level 2. To finish that off. Again, I'll go to Home. I'll grab the Floor tool. This will be a 12-inch one. And then again, back into that section to sort of see how that's working. I drew that guy on the wrong side, actually. That belongs over here. Okay. Let's add a few things. We could go to the door tool here, and we can drop in a door. And what this does is this actually gives you, these are all the doors that came with the template file. So this is what we have to choose from now. You could obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, you can make any type of door completely custom. These are just the doors that happen to have come with the template. So if you went out and you wanted to make a custom door, you would get into working with families. Now this is called, families is how Revit is organized. I mentioned at the beginning that Revit is organized into different building groups, which they call families. So a door is a type of a family. Let's see, a light fixture is a type of family. A piece of casework is a type of family. So if you want to make something from scratch, you would have to basically make a custom family. Which I guess if you wanted to do that, we have in our course library we have 4 really good courses in how to make families in Revit. Curtain wall families, casework families, and then advanced family topics. It's actually really good. But in this case, we just have this one single flush door, so we'll stick with that for now. And keep this here. See that Revit actually wants to tag that door. I don't need to see the tag, so I'm going to turn it off, which is another interesting topic. So when you're working in Revit, when you're working in CAD, everything is organized in layers. And the reason they're organized in layers is so you can turn things on and off, and you can control things. You can basically control what you can see. Revit doesn't really have any use for layers. Instead, since it's all family-based, you can choose to turn off all the doors, or you can choose to turn off all the door tags. So the quick key here is VG for visibility graphics. I think it probably also exists over here. Yeah, right here. Visibility graphics under View. So this is a list of all the different family types. Doors is one of them. These are the model categories. So this is all model components, model geometry. So if you wanted to turn off the doors and you didn't want to see them, you would just uncheck them. Or if you, let's say, had a door tag, you went to annotation categories, you could turn off door tags, click OK, and then the door tags go away. So that's kind of the equivalent of using layers in some ways. So let's say we have a little door there. I want to show you guys how to build a stair. That can be kind of tricky. So let's do that next. Actually, maybe before that, let's jump over to making sheets. I want to. What's going to be interesting is we'll take these plans, we'll put them on maybe an 11 by 17 plan section and elevation, and then you'll be able to see as we continue to add more content to the model, those views will show that content. Okay. So let's make a sheet real quick. I mentioned to you at the beginning that there's one file and that everything exists in one file. So these are all the views. Down here, this is where all the sheets exist. So unlike a project that I've worked on before, you might have 50 or 100 or 200 sheets listed underneath this part right here. So for us right now, there's nothing here. You can see there's no plus sign. So I'll right-click on the word Sheets and create a new sheet. Now currently, again, this template file, it loaded this one title block into our project. I'm going to select Load, and I'm going to try to find another one. When you install Revit on your machine, it gives you a bunch of content that you can go kind of pull from. There are some title blocks in here. Here's an 11 by 17. So I'm going to select the 11 by 17. And, this is obviously a construction sketch title block. So I'm going to do a couple things here. Number one, you can see that that sheet is created, right? It's here. It named it A101. And if I wanted to put this floor plan on this sheet, it's actually really as simple as dragging this onto the sheet. And there it is. Manipulating these sheets can be kind of difficult, or maybe not difficult, but this requires a little bit of effort. You can see that all these elevation tags are outside of the view. You can also see this title bar is not fitting on the sheet. So there's a couple things that need to be done. Very much the same way as when you're working in CAD and you're working with paper space and model space, you can kind of think about these sheets in sort of the same way. Uh, the model itself here, the view of the model, if you right-click into it, you can actually activate the view, which is kind of like going into model space. Once you're in here, this is a live view of the model, so if you deleted anything, you'd really be deleting it in the model. But sometimes, when you're at this stage of the game, you actually might want to manipulate things just so they fit on your sheet, just so they look nice, sort of just for more annotation or drafting purposes. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to crop this view a little bit. So I'm going to go back down here and turn on the Show Crop region. I'm going to select this crop region, and I'm actually going to crop in here as tight as I can get. And then the section tag is both of them are a little out of control, so I'm going to tighten them up a little bit. And then I'll turn the section tag off again. I'm sorry, the crop region off again. And then I'll right-click and deactivate the view. So now I'm essentially coming back into paper space. Yes. What's the scale? Good question. So when I right-click in this view and activate the view, down here it tells me the scale. This is kind of nice, unlike having to type in, I think I've forgotten it. What is it, 1/96 XP or something like that? To get the scale right. It has all the scales that you need here. Presumably you can create a custom scale, which I've never had to use before. But so I'll deactivate this. And the title bar is probably the last thing we need to fix. And it's kind of fussy how you manipulate it. So there's two problems with this title bar. Number one is it's too long, and number two, it's in the wrong position. So the best order to sort of fix them is to put it in the right position. I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to move it. to here. Then when you select the view again, it'll give you the blue grips, which allow you to change the length of it. And then real quick, this title block is mildly annoying, so I want to change it. A title block is a type of a family. So this will show you a little bit of the process of how you customize families. So I'm going to select this title block. And then up here it says Edit Family. And what it does is it's sort of unusual. It actually opens it in what's called the Family Editor, which is a little bit of a different working space. It's all by itself. And I can edit it here, and then I can save it out as its own family file, just for my own records. And then I can actually load it back into the project, and it'll update it. So I don't really need any of this stuff. Let's just say for now, that's fine. And that we can load this back into the project, and it will overwrite the existing version, and it'll be a little bit simpler. Okay? So you guys can probably imagine, that we could put sections and elevations and a 3D view on here as well. I want to show you maybe one other view that I think is really, really nice to have in Revit. So if I go to my 3D view, say this is my 3D view here. I'm going to right-click on this over here, and I'm going to duplicate this view with detailing. That means if I actually had any drafted lines in this view, that those drafted lines would come through. I don't, but that's typically the one that I use. You'll see this is called Copy of 3D. I'm going to right-click on this, and I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to call it Section Isometric. And then what's cool is that if you go into the properties of this view, there's actually a section box that you can turn on. Okay, and then when you select that section box, it gives you these blue grips that you can then manipulate. And then you can very quickly create a section isometric view. And then I think, if you turn it off, I think it makes it go away. So you need to leave it on. But the way that you can pull it out a little bit more. If you want to actually hide it, you don't want to see it, you got to pull this in a little bit tighter. If you right-click on this section box, you can do hide in view elements, and it will actually hide that view. So this is a great example of what I was talking about earlier when I said when you're working in Revit, one of the advantages is it allows you to see what you're trying to design a lot better. With something like this, with this section isometric, it really allows you to see, for example, as we would continue to refine this model, this curtain wall is too tall, so we need to pull it down. It really allows you to kind of see the problem at hand for you to design. So I'm going to go back to that sheet. Let's drag this section isometric on it. See how it looks. So I'm going to activate the view, and I'm going to actually make it a little bit more oblique. And then I'm going to turn on this little light bulb here, and this actually shows me everything that's hidden in my view temporarily, so I can basically just sort of turn on my section there, deactivate the view, and then slide it over. And again, this title bar, I'm going to position it first, and then upon selecting the view, it gives me the ability to change the length. So, for example, here's a sheet that you could print. You might ask, how do you print this? It's pretty simple. You would go to the purple R, and then print. If you wanted to make a PDF, you could do that. Basically, two things you need to know here. One is the print range. So, are you just printing the current window, the visible portion of the current window, or are you trying to print 500 sheets? Like, for example, when you need to print a set of drawings, you could actually select all 150 of those sheets and print them in one batch. So we're just going to print the current window. And then the settings here, we'll go to the setup button here. These are really kind of the settings you need to know. The paper size, in this case, 11 by 17. It's landscape. I want it centered. I'll do vector processing. I don't want to do fit to page. I want this to be 100%, which means that it'll print the 11 by 17 at 11 by 17, right? If I wanted it to be, half scale, I could just make this 50%. Rasters, high, colors, it would print it in color. This is a handy little one right here. Hide unreferenced view tags. Something that's kind of interesting, again, and actually really great about Revit is so many times when you're designing a building, you're working in plan and you're arranging things in plan, and then you're always asking yourself, hey, I wonder what that's doing in sections. So you want to see that idea in sections. So what's nice in Revit is you can create thousands of sections, and that's great because it's really easy to just drop a section in there, look at what you have, and then fix it and keep going. If that section never ends up on a sheet, in other words, it's just a section that you just used to kind of casually see what was happening, it would technically be an unreferenced view, right? It's not actually referenced to a sheet. Problem is, if you had thousands of sections that you just used to see things, then your drawings would get really ugly, and when you tried to print things, you'd have thousands of sections all over the place. So if you click Hide Unreferenced View Tags, any view that's not on a sheet, that annotation won't show up when you print, which is really handy. You could save these settings as, and then use them over and over again, and then just click OK. And that's fine. It's going to use what's best. Desktop, save it as. And there you go. So that's printing. So that's just kind of taking your round trip of making something really simple in Revit. How do you get it on a sheet? How do you print it? So let's go. I mean, I could probably spend a lot of time refining the walls and the floors and the roofs, but I want to just show you a couple more tools so you can see a little more things. But so I'll come here to level 1, go to home, and let's go to stairs. Stairs are generally kind of tricky. Wants me to save the project again. So, so I'm going to make a stair that goes from level 1 to level 2. These are some options that I had. I actually do want it to be 3 feet, so that's fine. My tread depth at 11 inches is fine. So what's nice is that it sort of automatically figures out how many risers you need, and so that when I come into the model and I'm here to click, you'll see it actually it's giving me the length of that run, which is really nice. You can even see, if you look closely there, it says 19 risers created, 15 created, 4 remaining. So if you wanted to actually do sort of an L or a C-shaped stair, or I'm sorry, U-shaped stair, you could do that. In this case, I just want to do something straight. And Let's go ahead and finish that. So again, I mean, although this can be a tricky tool, it is actually relatively sophisticated in that it's showing all. I mean, these are all sort of the conventions of how you draw a stair. It's got the up arrow and text with the cut line and then everything else dashed. So it is actually pretty good. It actually made railings for us as well. I'm going to move this over just a bit because it appears that the railings are into the wall. And then I'm going to cut another section through this. You know, here's actually a working thing that you should know that would be really, really helpful, despite all the tools that you still probably have to learn. It's important to have sort of a good strategy for how to work. Here's the problem. I'm working in the floor plan right now. Is this floor plan on a sheet? Easy question, right? Yes. I just put it on a sheet. Um, Here's the problem: is that I just spent probably 5 minutes of my time cropping this floor plan, moving the section tags in, getting it so that it looked right. The problem is that now I'm going to go make some more model components, right? I'm going to make some more stuff, and that process is sometimes kind of messy. Sometimes you want to turn all the section tags off. Sometimes you want to change the scale so you can see better. Sometimes you want to, crop it in a certain way. And the problem is if that plan or that view is on a sheet, you could actually be undoing all the work that you'd put into trying to make it look nice. So it's a really good strategy to make what's called working views, and those are plans and sections and elevations that you've created. That whenever you're going to go work on the model, you go and work in those views. All the other views, those views are on sheets, so you never touch those. You never go to work in those views. So how do you do that? It's actually really simple. I showed you earlier how do you duplicate a view. Right now I'm on floor plan level 1. If I right click on it and go duplicate view with detailing, you'll see it creates a copy of level 1. And let me pull this out here for a second so you can see something. If I go to this sheet, so sheet A101 is the sheet that we have created. Um, the view that's on, there are two views that are on sheet A101. Section isometric and level 1. So this view right here is the one that's on there. This copy of level 1 is not on that sheet. It's just another copy. And the way to think about plans and sections and elevations is they're not independent, they're not independent 2D drawings. They're actually like little bitty cameras that are looking at the model in a certain way. So you could have 500 cameras on level 1 looking down at the same thing, right? And one of those views, you could make it a wireframe view. And the other one, you could make it shaded. And the other one, you could make it quarter-inch scale. And the other one, you could make it half-inch scale. But if you deleted a wall, it would show it as deleted in all of them. Does that make sense? So you have a bunch of different views. You can sort of change the way things look, but in terms of the actual geometry, if you delete anything, if it's out of the model, it's out of the model. All those 500 cameras, they're going to see what's in the model one way or the other. Does that make sense? So copy of level 1. I actually want to rename this. And the convention that I've used is we name it underscore working level 1. Anybody know why underscore is, we put underscore first? Yeah, because when you put underscore, it'll sort it to the top of the list. So that way, whenever you work, you just go straight to the top of the floor plans. You should find your working plans there. You double click level 1, work underscore working level 1, and you go to work there. So for example, right, this is what I'm going to put this back here. It doesn't like this for now. So anyways, so this is what we have here. If I go to working level 1, And let's say I change this to, whatever, 1/4 inch scale, and I change it to consistent colors, and I crop this view so that I can only see half of it, right? I did all this to working level 1. When I go back to my sheet, nothing happened, right? Nothing happened because I didn't fool around with level 1, that view, right? But again, if I come back in here, and if I delete the stair, is the stair gonna be on the sheet or not? No, right? You go to you go to the sheet, no stair. Okay? Sometimes that's just kind of a little bit of a tricky thing to kind of understand. It takes a little bit of working in Revit to really get it. So I'll Control Z and undo that. Now, what's cool again about this section isometric, if I go to activate view, and if I turn on the hidden, reveal hidden here, I can probably cut through that stair. So there it is. You can see the stair. And what's missing and what's the problem with my stair and my floor right now? I need to do what to the floor? I need to cut a hole in the floor, right? Okay. So I'll deactivate this view. I'm going to make a working level 2, even though it's not on a sheet right now. I'm going to select my floor. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a crossing window. And then I'm going to go to my filter here. I've got all kinds of things selected right now. This is a different way to select things. Sometimes when things are on top of each other, it's hard to kind of select the right thing. I'm going to check none, and then I'm just going to select the floor here. So then it's just got those 2 pieces. And I actually do not want this floor. So I'm going to hold down Shift, and that will deselect that one. And then I'm going to select Edit Boundary. So this takes me back to this, this sort of sketch mode. And what I'll do is actually draw I'm actually going to draw the hole. And I'm going to use the called split line. Where is it? Split element. SL is the quick key. And that's one other tip is when you're working in Revit, when you hover over any of these tools, right next to the name of the tool, it gives you its quick key in parentheses. In CAD, things tend to be 1, C or M or whatever. In Revit, they all tend to be 2 letters. So SL is split element, and I'm going to do TR for trim, and trim these lines. Very much needs to be one continuous. You can think of it as one continuous polyline. And then if we go back to our sheet, so we have that hole cut in there. Um, maybe I'll, if I go back to this sheet, a couple other things that you could do. These are pretty simple. If you activate this view, if you go to the Annotate tab, this is where you get to, this is where you can add text and dimensions I showed you earlier, so text is pretty simple. You can, add different arrows and things. that, and then again, you can create a dimension. Maybe you wanted an overall dimension string from here to here. Maybe you wanted to adjust that, and so on. Again, selecting things can be a little tricky, so you have to use that tab key. Those are a couple things. This appears to be a little big, so perhaps we want to change the properties of this to make it a little smaller. So I can see we're at 8:03, and we only have about 30 more hours of stuff to go over, and you guys will have a very complete understanding of how to use this tool. But I'm sure some of you guys have other things to do. Maybe I'll stick around for a little bit longer and continue making a couple more things for the folks that want to stick around. But for those of you that do need to go, I'll just say thank you for again for having me. I hope that you guys kind of got a sense of some things that you can do. I guess if you haven't already signed up for the free Black Spectacles tutorials, you can do that here. And if you have any questions or anything, my email address is my name, Mark Tier, at blackspectacles.com. So you can just send me an email. And if you have any questions about Revit, what you can or can't do, um, feel free to send me an email. So that is it. And with that, I guess we also officially open the free day of Black Spectacles tutorials. So for those of you that are signed up, I'm really curious to get your feedback. So please, we have on any of the course pages, there's a feedback tab that allows you to give praise, ask a question, suggest an idea. Um, so please do that. I really want to find out how things are working for you guys. You should know there is a bug still in Internet Explorer 8. So it works in everything else except for Internet Explorer, some of the older versions, which can be kind of buggy. So, but it works in anything else. So thank you, everyone.